There are a number of defining characteristics and issues that govern the water system and the water problems in the region. First and foremost is the issue of water scarcity. This issue is extremely severe and critical. The Arab world has 1% of the total fresh water, while it has about 5% of the total population. This asymmetry, this imbalance between the proportion of the population and proportion of water puts the Middle East at the forefront of areas that have to face the challenge of water scarcity. The Water Bank at one time had established a line that calls the poverty line, which is defined to be 1,000 cubic meter per person per year. There are 22 countries in the world that fall below this line. 15 of them are in the region. So water scarcity cannot be exaggerated in the region. And this water scarcity is compounded by economic scarcity, in the sense that the region is not using this water in a way that is rational and shows attempt to allocate the scarce resource among competing ends in a proper way. The other issue is the shared water. There is no country in the region, the exception perhaps of Lebanon, that has its own water to use. Most of this water is shared. Some have put this number to be above 85%, coming from outside, like Iraq and Syria share water with Turkey. Syria shares water with Turkey, with Palestine, with Israel, with Lebanon. And if you look at the Nile, Egypt shares water with Ethiopia and with Sudan, and now southern Sudan and northern Sudan. And there are attempts of trying to bring the whole riparians on Lake Victoria to share in this water. There is also asymmetry of power. And that's a very serious issue too, in the sense that there are some riparians that are exceptionally more powerful than their neighbors. On the Euphrates and Tigris, Syria and Iraq have been weakened. They are now absorbed in civil strife, and Turkey is exercising hegemonic power. And there is the Jordan River, where Israel has far more power relative to all the riparians. And in the Nile Valley too, Egypt is relatively more powerful than Ethiopia and the two Sudans. There is also an asymmetry between the balance of power and the balance of interest. The proportion of people depending on agriculture in the Jordan Basin and in the Tigris, Euphrates, and the Nile is such that Jordan and Palestinians depend to the tune of 35% of their labor works in agriculture. Probably higher proportion in Syria and much higher proportion in Egypt. And other countries, like in Israel, it depends on agriculture for only 2% of its gross domestic product, and perhaps less than in terms of the share of labor engaged there. There is no agreement that governs the allocation of water in the region. International law is literally without any teeth, and the only principle that seems to be governing the allocation of water is that no riparian should use its share in a way that would injure or is injurious to the rights and the interests of other riparians. Other than that, there is really nothing like this. So in some sense, the most important issue here is the extent to which this water is also underpinning food insecurity. The region is perhaps notorious for importing most of its food. And in the absence of sufficient amount of water and viable agriculture, these countries remain absolutely exposed, vulnerable to the price swings of food and to the availability of food. And given the fact that we are on the throes of major developments in terms of climate change and global warming, and this is going to bring about perhaps drier seasons, higher variability and lack of predictability of water supplies. This is going to exacerbate the food insecurity problems. There are now contentions, and some who have argued, and I would belong to this group who feel that these river basins are nascent bends, nascent areas of violence, that perhaps the scarcity of this water is going to translate into a greater political instability and perhaps future violence.